What were the most memorable accomplishments in your last position? My last position was selling copy machines. I had one month where I broke the sales record for a given month. I think that was a great accomplishment. However, throughout the calendar year, I exceeded the average number of sales by 20%, 10 out of 12 months. Having a great month is good, but I feel it is a greater accomplishment maintaining solid numbers throughout the whole year. Tell me about the best manager you ever had. My favorite manager was a person with a lot of knowledge. She stood her ground firmly and knew the best process to take by analyzing all the information. Tell me about the worst manager you ever had. In my last position, I had a manager who didn't like to give instructions. I managed to figure a lot of it out, but I would have saved a lot of time if my manager gave a simple 5-minute overview on the project. What could you have done to improve your relationship with a manager you didn't like? One of my managers gave too much criticism. I value criticism, but hearing something negative every other day was difficult. I think I could have communicated how the criticism affected me in order to improve our relationship. What were the most memorable accomplishments in your last position? I think the greatest accomplishment in my last position was implementing a simple process that reduced the number of broken builds by 20%. Whenever we have a broken build, it slows down work for 20 different people. That puts risk on slipping the ship date. But my process involved following 25 steps prior to building to ensure a successful build. The 25 steps only took 15 minutes to complete, and we reduced the number of build breaks significantly. It worked for our product, and upper management instructed other groups in our organization to put this process in place. I really felt excited about that accomplishment. Tell me about the best manager you ever had. My favorite manager was very trusting and easy to approach. I grew in many ways under this manager, and I valued his method of dealing with directs. I believe in growing employees, and this manager did a great job. Tell me about the worst manager you ever had. One manager didn't like talking to people. He always had his office door closed, and when anyone asked a question, he seemed disturbed. He was very intelligent and produced a great deal of work, but as a manager, I believe you should be approachable by your directs. What could you have done to improve your relationship with a manager you didn't like? I had a manager in the past I didn't like that much, but I couldn't say he was a bad manager. Our personalities conflicted and we had some arguments. This affected my performance and willingness to work in the beginning, but I asked myself the same question. I thought I should try to get along with my manager despite my personal feelings. I set them aside and maintained a professional relationship. Taking this approach really helped. Because I was willing to look past minor differences, our work relationship got stronger and I performed at a higher level. Tell me about the best manager you ever had. I had a manager that worked efficiently. Instead of bossing everyone around, he set an example of hard work through his actions. I respected that trait and learned to be more like him by working smarter. Tell me about the worst manager you ever had. The worst manager I had was when I was working at a database company. I didn't like my manager because he was never available. Whenever he was given an assignment, he always delegated the work without explaining the details. We were told to figure it out. I believe you can learn from figuring some things out by yourself, but it was obvious that this wasn't his intention. But the worst thing about it was that I didn't know that he was bad until I changed to a different manager. He kept feeding us false hope, saying we were close to being promoted. Basically, it was a way to keep us motivated to work extra hard. Sure, it worked for a while, but I didn't gain anything else out of it except what not to be as a manager. What were the most memorable accomplishments in your last position? I remember the day I completed an audit from beginning to end all by myself. Since I was an entry-level auditor, this accomplishment really felt good because it was my first major step. Tell me about the best manager you ever had. The best manager I had was during my first year at Microsoft. Since then, I had been under many different managers, but nobody matched up to his level. I respected him the most because of two reasons. He spent a great deal of time mentoring me and teaching me many work-related things. I became a great employee because of him. And second, he produced the greatest amount of quality work among all the other managers. I always wondered how he could spend so much time with me and still find ways to outperform other managers. But that is where I learned how to work smart and efficiently. He showed me how to be the best employee through his action and through the individual lessons he gave me. I was so happy to have had a great manager early in my career. What could you have done to improve your relationship with a manager you didn't like? If I communicated my problems earlier, I feel we both would have benefited. I waited several months before approaching my manager, and after our talk, our relationship got much better. So I could have improved my relationship by talking about problems sooner than later. What were the most memorable accomplishments in your last position? One day our director came out of his office asking who wrote up the documentation for ABC firm. I didn't know if he was upset or impressed. I said I did it, and he basically said, "Great job," and went back to his office. This was memorable because the director never did this before. Tell me about the worst manager you ever had. In my last position, I had a manager who didn't like to give instructions. I managed to figure a lot of it out, but I would have saved a lot of time if my manager gave a simple 5-minute overview on the project. What could you have done to improve your relationship with a manager you didn't like? I feel I should be more understanding of different work styles. I didn't like my manager not communicating enough, but that didn't mean we couldn't approach him. So I'm learning to work seamlessly with different types of people. What were the most memorable accomplishments in your last position? The most memorable accomplishment I had as a sales associate for a software company was closing a deal worth $17 million. This was the second largest order our company ever had, and it felt like hitting a grand slam.